Chapter 902, Fleeing for Thousands of Meters, 5. Seeing the girl dressed this way, Su Luo still recognized her at once. This young woman was definitely Fairy Yin Xia's maid. She never thought that the old witch's speed would be this fast. Not only did she herself give chase to kill Su Luo, she also dispatched all of her subordinates. At this time, that white-clothed woman with the famous indifferent expression watched the ship attentively with a gloomy and cold gaze. On the deck, the ship's captain, among the crowd of sailors, stepped out quickly. "Let everyone gather on the deck. Otherwise, kill them all without discussion." The white-clothed woman's face had a murderous expression. "Who do you think you are? Calling me to gather, and I'll just gather everyone?" A sailor, in a rage, stood out to reason with her. However, just as he spoke, he suffered an unexpected calamity, because that white-clothed woman brushed her sleeve, and one could only see a cold tip of a blade was sent towards that sailor's throat. A slight noise, and this sailor had already flipped over on the deck. A feather was sticking out of his throat. A skinny feather was able to take a life. At this moment, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The ship captain's figure had become slightly rigid. This ship was merely a merchant ship. Its defensive strength could not possibly be very strong. They had invited a group of guards. The highest among them was only at the 4th rank. However, seeing this young lady before their eyes, the captain's heart trembled slightly. This young lady is at least at the 5th rank or above. The guard captain leaned close to the ship captain's ear and told him in a low voice. The ship captain's intention to resist was immediately extinguished. "Go gather everyone onto the deck," the ship captain commanded as he waved his hand. These people came with tumultuous momentum. At a single glance, one could tell that they weren't ordinary bandits. He was truly afraid. Their power appeared to be stronger, so he had no choice but to lower his head. Actually, it wasn't just this ship. At this time, within the range of 25 kilometers, the ships that were coming and going were all subjected to this kind of inspection. Fairy Yin Xia's methods were appalling. Within a very short period of time, they had set up this within 25 kilometers. The ships in front and behind had all been blocked and searched. The ships on the water's surface were investigated by someone. Under the water, there might also be traps. At this time, the people on the ship all dared to get angry but dared not speak. The atmosphere was heavy and nervous. All the people on the ship gathered on the deck. The only one remaining was Su Luo in the corner. Su Luo thought it over for a while but still decided not to go out. She touched her face and couldn't help but be somewhat speechless. Right now, this face of hers was truly would really give people too deep of an impression. In short, this face was extremely beautiful, extraordinarily so. It was the kind of beauty that even if Li Yaoyao saw it, she would feel inferior. However, she wasn't sure if God was also teasing her. Nearly all the black-colored medicinal juice on her face had come off, all except that dark circle around her right eye which remained. Seen those panda eyes? At this moment, that circle around Su Luo's right eye was 100 times worse than those panda eyes. On this absolutely beautiful face, the rest of the skin was like snow-white amber, pure and fair, except for that right eye. It was as though she had been ruthlessly punched by someone, a pitch-black circle. It looked exceedingly strange. Facing the reflection of her face in the water, the more Su Luo looked at it, the more she felt. The corner of her mouth parted inwardly, and she made a secret resolution. Wait until after she escaped this time. She must come up with a way to get rid of this birthmark-like panda circle from her right eye. Otherwise, if she continued with this kind of face, Su Luo felt that she definitely wouldn't be able to eat. At this time, there was new activity on the ship again. After everyone had arrived on the deck, in an instant, there were several shadows that rapidly swept over every corner of the ship. Very clearly, they had also guessed it was extremely improbable that the real Su Luo would go to the deck and throw away her life. Su Luo watched a shadow come towards the corner she was in. At this time, her eyes narrowed and her whole body was on guard. Chapter 903, Moment of Life or Death, 1. Should she make a move? She was sure she could kill this person with one move, without making any noise. But what would she do after that? Even if she could get rid of all of these people and their corpses too, then what about afterwards? If she did it like this, besides revealing her own position, there were no other benefits whatsoever. Just when Su Luo was tangled and undecided, unexpectedly, a voice Su Luo was familiar with came from the deck. Do not let any nooks and corners slip by. Search carefully. This voice, even if she turned to ash, Su Luo would still recognize it. Yin Xia, that old witch, she had actually chased after her onto this ship too. There were so many ships coming and going. Yet, she just so happened to purposely pick this ship. Su Luo clenched her fists firmly. This time, she absolutely could not make any moves. Otherwise, considering Yin Xia, that old witch's, sharp perception, she would definitely be found. It seemed that leaving by riding on this ship was impossible. Thinking up to now, Su Luo's figure moved slightly. She noiselessly jumped off the ship, her entire body buried in the water. The water rippled with tiny bubbles, and very quickly, the water's surface resumed its original tranquil state. No one had seen Su Luo's disappearing act. However, were there really no traps underwater? Fairy Yin Xia's methods were cruel. How could she overlook such a huge loophole? Su Luo, while in the water, found out that this wasn't a good way to get out either. Su Luo had originally thought of hiding at the bottom of the ship. However, she sent some spirit force out and the situation within a range of several hundred meters appeared in her mind. At this time, just under this ship, there were no less than 3 martial artists waiting in ambush. Su Luo could not help but secretly rejoice. Rejoice that in a moment ago, when she went into the water, she had been cautious and careful, that she didn't act impulsively. Otherwise, as long as she had made even a little bit of sound, the people under the ship would have noticed something peculiar. Su Luo quietly slipped towards a distant place. It wasn't because she couldn't kill those 3 people, rather, because Yin Xia, that old witch, was just above her head. She didn't even have enough time to hide. How could she dare to make a sound? The river was very wide. Su Luo had decided in her mind. From this side of the river, she would swim towards the other side. Although Su Luo was cautious and solemn, prudent and taking precautions, but she didn't swim very far before she saw an unfamiliar shadow rushing directly towards her. This person was dressed the same as those people under the ship. Su Luo had thoughts of evading, but the distance between the 2 people was very wide. Before Su Luo could evade, that person had raised his head, clearly having already seen Su Luo. He opened his mouth wanting to shout, but Su Luo was already a step ahead. She used her palm to hack the back of his neck. Snap, there was a slight noise and this person was already dead. Don't blame Su Luo for using such a ruthless method. Now, the situation was desperate. A slight bit of inattentiveness would attract the pursuit of Yin Xia, that old witch. Therefore, Su Luo absolutely would not give these people even half a chance. This corpse, Su Luo's eyes narrowed halfway. These people were patrolling back and forth underwater. If she just randomly threw the corpse as she wished, it would quickly be discovered by someone. By that time, suddenly, a light flashed in Su Luo's eyes. Humph, humph. Didn't the old witch want to catch her? Then, when she infiltrates into the old witch's ranks, see how she would catch her. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a slight sneer. Without saying anything further, she pulled off the corpse's clothes and covered herself with it. As for this corpse, she conveniently threw him into her space. At this time, Su Luo was dressed entirely in male clothes. Her hair was also combed to the style used by the man before. At a rough glance, she really did look like that person, let alone mentioning that this was underwater. One's sight was already very fuzzy, so it was even harder to see clearly. Chapter 904, Moment of Life or Death, 2. Even if Su Luo wanted to seize this opportunity to deceive her eyes and pass through, it would not be hard. At this time, Su Luo was disguised like this and swam forward towards the checkpoint ahead with strong purpose. The river was very wide. Very quickly, Su Luo had swum to the central part of the river. Amidst this course of events, several times she nearly came into contact with someone. However, whenever the opponent saw Su Luo dressed this way, They never suspected her identity and swam off without even shouting a greeting. Gradually, Su Luo understood. Very clearly, these people were the underwater patrol's cannon fodder. They just swam back and forth in the river. Their objective was to come across her and cause some activity Su Luo secretly celebrated inwardly. Fortunately, she hadn't carelessly made any noise. At this time, Su Luo had already swum to the edge of the river. She thought that, on both sides of the river, the ships were stopped for inspections. This meant inevitably in the center of the river would be a loophole she could use. At this time, she surveyed her surrounding for a moment. Seeing her surroundings appeared quiet, and as far as she could see, there wasn't a single person. And up ahead within several meters was an exit. Su Luo was wary, and once again stretched out her spirit force to quietly examine this area within several hundred meters. However, the results of her examination was the same as what she saw. Could it be that this place was so lax? Su Luo thought somewhat suspiciously. With a probing nature, so she approached bit by bit. Suddenly, a lazy voice came from Su Luo's mind. If you don't want to die, then don't go forward. This voice naturally had come from Little Sky in the small stone. This child was very experienced and knowledgeable. Although he was arrogant and pampered, using words that was unpleasant to hear when speaking, but there hadn't been a time when he wasn't right. Su Luo immediately stopped moving. I also feel it's somewhat odd. Su Luo thought a bit and grabbed a little fish that swam past her and tossed it towards the front. At a spot a meter ahead, a sizzling sound immediately burst out. A strong electric current flashed past. That fish immediately was fried without even leaving any ashes behind. Su Luo's eyes were half narrowed. As expected, Yin Xia, that old witch, had set up traps here. This is called underwater heavenly thunder wave. Little Sky, inside the space, lazily had one leg over the other and said unhurriedly, within this 2.5 kilometers range underwater, an underwater heavenly thunder wave has been set up. I never would have thought that after so many years, there would still be someone who knows how to use this underwater heavenly thunder wave. Su Luo's expression changed slightly. There's a trap set up for a range of 2.5 kilometers underwater? This person has a low level of cultivation and can only control a small range of 2.5 kilometers. How boring. Little Skies curled his lips. The corner of Su Luo's mouth parted. She was certain the person who set up this underwater heavenly thunder wave was definitely Yin Xia, that old witch. However, she who had a strong cultivation was spoken of as a person with low cultivation by this little guy. Really don't know how he thinks. If you've got such a formidable cultivation, let me have a look. Su Luo was speechless. In these waters, underneath was the underwater heavenly thunder wave, and above was the checkpoints being inspected. Su Luo felt like a turtle trapped in a jar, unable to escape no matter what. Just at this moment, all of a sudden, two figures, one from the left and one from the right, shot towards the place where Su Luo was. The strength of these two people was not weak. Was the person Su Luo had gotten rid of earlier could be compared to. Where's your captain? Underwater, the person on her left used his voice to transmit sound to Su Luo. Captain? Su Luo pointed up ahead. Over there? Then why don't you hurry up and go there? The person on her left very fiercely glared at Su Luo. Fortunately, it was in the dark. Su Luo's right eye's dark circle was fused together with her disguise, so the other person couldn't see it. Hearing this, Su Luo hurriedly swam forward. Since it was them who that told her to go, then she should hurriedly go, so as to avoid problems occurring. Chapter 905. Moment of Life or Death 3. Just at this moment, the person on the right narrowed his eyes dangerously and said to the person on the left, I feel that something is off about this person. The person on the left gave him a meaningful glance. As a result, these two people increased their speed, silently following behind Su Luo. At this moment, Su Luo's heart shivered from cold. Stemming from her instinct for danger, she knew those two people had followed her. But where did the problem occur? Su Luo merely thought it through once and understood. Just now, the person on the left had asked her where was the group leader. It was sufficient to say that the corpse lying in her space, that cannon fodder of a group leader, was not found. However, when Su Luo left, her speed was very fast. That clearly was not the speed a lowly group member should have. Therefore, it was hard to avoid the opponents from having suspicions. However, those two people hadn't yelled loudly to attract others, so the situation hadn't deteriorated to that degree. In fact, Su Luo completely understood the reason behind why those two people didn't shout out loud to attract others. Because the credit for personally catching the person versus giving a warning was as different as the sky and earth. Just when these two people approached Su Luo, one from the left side and the other from the right, it seemed as if Su Luo was completely unaware of the approaching danger, and she still kept the current speed to move forward. That pair, one from the right and the other on the left's, mouth hooked into a mocking smile. Afterwards, the pair rushed towards Su Luo, however, before they even got close to Su Luo. A small white dragon suddenly appeared next to the neck of the person on the left. The little dragon opened his mouth that was filled with fierce, sharp teeth and directly bit off a huge hole in that person's throat. Even if this person wanted to yell for help, he couldn't. In the end, he could only drop both arms and die with remaining grievances. At this time, the person on the right also met with an accident. Just when this person was about to make a move against Su Luo, a sturdy green vine came out of nowhere and silently approached this person from the back. Suddenly, the green vine gave a strong tug. Whoosh, a light sound echoed. This person's head was wrapped up by the green vine, then tightened strongly. How powerful was the variant red acacia tree? Very quickly, this person was strangled to death. The body fell perfectly straight. Only now did Su Luo turn her head around, faintly smiling. Want to assassinate this lady? Courage is not small. Oh. Because she didn't want others to see any clues, Su Luo decided to also collect these two corpses into her space. Therefore, her space was really an essential treasure for people who traveled that people would kill for. However, without waiting for Su Luo to make a move, an accident suddenly occurred at this time. It wasn't due to these two corpses, rather that loathsome girl is here. Quickly chase. A violent yelling sound could be heard coming from a place near Su Luo's location. Without waiting for Su Luo's command, the variant red acacia tree flung a green vine over. That person forever shut his mouth. This person obviously bumped into Su Luo while she was committing the previous murder. Quickly go. Su Luo tossed both the little divine dragon and the variant red acacia tree back into her space. Her figure quickly shot towards the east side. The road to the west was already blocked. Now, she could only go east. Only, Su Luo already knew, the road to the east was also blocked. Just now, the other person's scream was very useful. In an instant, a countless number of figures quickly shot towards the place Su Luo was at, but there was also a benefit to this. Where is that loathsome girl? A person that looked like a captain yelled out, stopping Su Luo. Su Luo originally thought to use one strike to smack him to death, but hearing this sentence, that's right, now, her body was disguised with the same outfit as the same party as him. Su Luo pointed behind her. She ran in that direction. You go first to give chase. I will go call for the others. Good, quickly go call. That captain waved his hand, led the group of people behind him and brushed past Su Luo, going in the opposite direction. Chapter 906, Moment of Life or Death. 4. Seeing this, Su Luo silently wiped off her sweat. In her space, the little divine dragon and variant red acacia tree were extremely excited. Both rolled up their sleeves, eager for battle with strong intent. Seeing how there was no battle, they immediately wilted. Su Luo glanced at them in exasperation. If you can outsmart the opponent, then don't need to use force. If at that time you attracted the old witch Yin Xiao over, even if you had wings you won't escape, understand? The old witch Yin Xiao was an expert at the same level as master, not someone she could deal with right now. However, that old witch's strength was so strong. Why doesn't she have the dignity of a strong expert? Wasn't she afraid of losing face? However, Su Luo doesn't know. With regards to others, Fairy Yin Xiao was naturally aloof and high above, with no need to bother with them. But based on Su Luo's family background from the start, it was foreordained Fairy Yin Xiao absolutely wouldn't let her go. Su Luo with flying speed ran forward, However, she hasn't ran very far before she suddenly had a dizzy spell. What's going on? Su Luo exclaimed in astonishment. Scan array. Little Sky's leisurely voice carried a trace of gravity came from the little stone. You're about to be finished. What's going on? Su Luo's long, shapely eyebrows had a trace of worry, causing such a big movement here, but that old witch still didn't come over. Do you know why? Little Sky had his eyes narrowed. Why? Su Luo also felt it was strange. That old witch clearly was here, but why didn't she personally make a move? That's because she is pulling up the net. Little Sky's expression was cold as he indifferently stared at Su Luo. The underwater heavenly thunder wave. That is a huge net. Once that old witch is sure of your location, she can easily pull up the net, and even if you had wings would not be able to escape. Su Luo was tangled. There was such a thing like this. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Su Luo's thread of worry flashed through her heart. Would telling you earlier make any difference? In the end, you would still be netted. Little Sky curled his lips as if this was a foregone conclusion. At this moment, Su Luo felt like a fish that was trapped in a sturdy net. Front, back, and in all directions there wasn't a path for her to withdraw. That doesn't mean there completely isn't a way out. Little Sky's eyes flashed, boo. But what? Hurry up and tell me, That old witch had already started to lift up the net. If she was fished out of the water's surface, she was certainly done for. Before, she could still use flowery speech to fool the old witch, but now she had already destroyed her entire underwater palace. How could there be good fruit for her to eat? It was definitely a dead end for her. I'm thinking of ways right now, At least you should first find where the eye of the array is. Little Sky seemed to find a bit hard to say. Finally, in order to survive, he had no choice but to mention it. Continue to run forward. If you see a whirlpool, then stop. Right now the thunder wave net buried in the mud underwater slowly moved forward and floated up. Su Luo's expression changed slightly. This old witch really had a great plan. First, she sacrificed the cannon folder, then determined that she was indeed within this area, and afterwards she pulled up the underwater heavenly thunder wave net. Presumably releasing this net would consume a lot of her spirit power. Otherwise, she wouldn't let the cannon folder go underwater to look for her first. Su Luo didn't have time to think more. Her body quickly sprang forward like lightning. At this moment, Su Luo's speed had soared to the max and was incredibly fast. Luckily, she was protected by nothingness of space, so her speed wasn't affected by the water's drag. However, Su Luo's complexion still gradually turned pale, because she could clearly feel the underwater electric net was moving more upward and rising speed was getting faster and faster. Chapter 907, Moment of Life or Death, 5. Now, from the water surface was less than 10 meters. But Little Sky still couldn't locate the eye of the scan array. 9 meters, 8 meters, 7 meters, that underwater thunder wave net rapidly continued to rise. Wherever the thunder wave net was, the underwater creatures would start to crackle with sparks shattering everywhere. Su Luo strongly believed the underwater creatures within a 2.5-kilometer radius, being pulled in by the thunder wave net, would all die. Stop! Little Sky's voice echoed in Su Luo's head. Here. Su Luo's eyes flashed with a touch of hope. Sure enough, the heavens would not bar her way. You see that huge whirlpool? Remember, first, you must throw me in the middle of that whirlpool. Only then can I destroy this net. However, I can only hold it off for a very short time, about an instant. You must seize this opportunity to fly out of here. Little Sky was sealed in the stone and couldn't move about. Only when it came in contact with the stone, then he would activate the stone. At this moment, the underwater thunder wave net was only 3 meters away from the water's surface. Su Luo's eyes narrowed. Okay. Su Luo had no time to mull it over and concentrated all her spirit force into her right hand. Afterwards, she tightly pinched the little stone and strongly threw him towards the center of whirlpool up ahead. The center of the whirlpool was only the size of a fist, but Su Luo's aim was very accurate. One could only hear a whoosh sound echoed, and little stone was tossed in. Now, The underwater thunder wave net was only 1 meter away from the water's surface. Su Luo could clearly hear and feel the sizzling sounds that made her hair stand up straight from the thunder wave net. Su Luo didn't have time to think more deeply. Her body shot towards the center of the whirlpool with lightning-fast speed. As matter stands, she had no other choice. The little stone really didn't lie. Su Luo's body quickly left the eye of the whirlpool. She lifted her head and saw a tree on the side. Su Luo grabbed the little stone that fell from high up in the air. With her toes on the ground, with a slight use of strength, her body whirled, turned around, and flew towards that huge tree. Su Luo used it as a leverage. Her body quickly shot forward like lightning in the blink of an eye. Su Luo had already shot several hundred meters away. And at this moment, Fairy Yin Xia floated in midair, eyes tightly closed, muttering words in her mouth. Countless lighting converged around her body, bursting out. The instant when Su Luo was about to fly out, the entire thunder wave net underwater was pulled up by Fairy Yin Xia. The huge thunder wave net from the four corners came together in the center, finally coiled up like a ball, placed horizontally in midair. The corner of Fairy Yin Xia's mouth curled up into a sinister and cruel smile. Loathsome girl, this time see where you can run to. Fairy Yin Xia suddenly opened her eyes. She casually waved her sleeves. That thunder wave net then appeared in front of her. She flung her sleeves once again. The closed thunder wave net suddenly opened, like a rolled-up carpet spreading out until flat in midair. The thunder wave net was completely empty. Fairy Yin Xia stared blankly. Her face originally had a victorious expression, in an instant become overcast like an angry hurricane. Is that loathsome girl a loachfish? How could she slip away? Fairy Yin Xia was simply about to collapse. This time, she laid down an inescapable net, mobilized countless subordinates, and she even personally overseen it. Unexpectedly, that loathsome girl was still able to escape. If this matter was to spread out, where would her dignity be? How could she stand amongst them? Expand the searching area. Within the 25 kilometers, seal off everything. Fairy Yin Xia's face was malevolent and twisted. Her eyes exploded out with a raging inferno. Time and time again, Su Luo had fled. Fairy Yin Xia was already at the edge of going crazy. Loathsome girl, wait until I catch you. I'll slice you into 8 pieces. Chapter 908. Moment of Life or Death. 6. Fairy Yin Xia tightly clenched her fists and very fiercely vowed. Wherefore would Su Luo have the time to care about Fairy Yin Xia's vow? Right now, she didn't even have time to run. Su Luo escaped from the eye of the scan array. Outside of the scan array, the defense wasn't so strict. So Su Luo ran westward for 500 meters without any sign of a killer. Just when Su Luo was about to take a deep breath, a person walked directly towards her. 7th team, aren't you guys supposed to be underwater? Why did you run up the shore? A voice spoke from behind Su Luo. Su Luo's heart shook. Fuck, this old witch Yin Xia's had an endless number of subordinates that lingers around. Fortunately, she had the foresight to change into the opponent's uniform. Otherwise, the sound coming behind her wouldn't be a voice, but a cold sword. Master commanded us to chase in the eastern direction. Why are you running to the west? This man in the same trade patted Su Luo's shoulder. But no sooner said than done. Just when his hand was about to touch Su Luo's shoulder, Su Luo's 2 hands formed the complicated seal for Great Dimensional Imprint, BM. The Great Dimensional Imprint smashed down. Only now did Su Luo slowly turn around. At this moment, standing in front of Su Luo was a black-clothed, mysterious killer. Having gotten smacked by the Great Dimensional Imprint, this time, now his originally clear eyes had turned into hypnotic spiral-shaped. His body also started to sway you. Or not? 70? While he was talking, he secretly clenched his fist. However, Su Luo saw his little movement and directly chopped down on his right hand. Crack, his bones shattered. The black-clothed man wanted to shout, but Su Luo was already one step ahead by severing his throat. The black-clothed man finally fell back and died without closing his eyes. Su Luo sympathetically looked at him. 7 my ass, if you hadn't said anything I really didn't want to kill you. To be an assassin, then be an assassin. But you had to meddle in other people's business, then this is the consequences. Just now, this black-clothed man had tightly clenched his fist. Clearly it was odd. Su Luo opened his hand. Seeing in his hand, there was a spherical-shaped thing. Squeezed it. It seemed to be very soft. However, when Su Luo poured in some spirit power, after squeezing until it exploded, it would give rise to a huge sound. Su Luo threw this thing in her space, then took off this black-clothed killer's clothes. Once on the shore, she obviously couldn't wear the same clothes that she wore underwater. These black-clothed people on the shore, beside their clothes being black, they also had the black hood and face scarves, with their entire head wrapped up. Only there were revealed eyes. Therefore, Su Luo's left panda-like eyes were completely covered. After picking up the body, Su Luo once again ran off westward. On the way, Su Luo saw countless number black-clothed killers running back and forth. Some were hidden in dark corners, some were hidden among the lush vegetation of ancient trees, and some were hidden in the mud. In summary, everyone were seriously carrying out orders, waiting for higher-ups' commands. Su Luo's heart was secretly vigilant. Wasn't Fairy Yin Xia someone that famous families want to chase and kill openly? Wasn't she someone on the rewards list? She secretly had such a powerful force? These assassins wouldn't stop for even a bit. The cliff were sheer and narrowed, very difficult to walk. But Su Luo's speed was very fast. She jumped and ran between mountains. She was unlike others. If it was a dead-end road, she still had the variant red acacia tree's green vine to help her. A small group appeared ahead. This team was also heading toward the west. The corner of Su Luo's mouth curled up into a cunning smile. She alone was a huge target, but if she followed a team and have them led the way, she naturally would be safe. Chapter 909, Moment of Life or Death, 7. The reckless Su Luo silently approached the last team member in the back. The dagger in her hand flashed by. A very small sound echoed, and Su Luo had already eliminated that last team person on the team. After throwing the body into her space, Su Luo carefully retrieved her dagger and nonchalantly followed in the position of the last person on the team. It was nighttime. In the gathering darkness, a person's vision was obstructed. Su Luo followed the team from behind, safely traveled for 5 kilometers. During this time, these black-clothed men would occasionally have some light conversations. Su Luo listened to their conversations, and apparently they didn't seem to know about her right eye's characteristic. Didn't see it? Su Luo touched her right eye. Could it be Li Yaoyao didn't tell that old witch Yin Xia? What Su Luo didn't know was that Li Yaoyao really wanted to say it, but at that time, she was lifted up by the old witch Yin Xia, completely lacking the chance to say it And afterwards Li Yaoyao got burned, then drenched by water. By then Fairy Yin Xia had already abandoned her to chase after Su Luo. Therefore, Fairy Yin Xia simply don't know about Su Luo's right eye characteristic. Otherwise, she would make an accurate catch with one grab. Suddenly, the team captain waved his hand, and the whole team stopped in place. Rest in place. The team captain coldly commanded. Captain, we have more than 1,000 people searching and couldn't find one loathsome girl. This isn't right, While resting, one teammate said to the captain. The captain frowned. Your meaning is? You say, is it possible that loathsome girl is already hiding in our team? The teammate was indulging in flight of fantasy, but actually hit the mark. 50. After the teammate had said this, many of the black-clothed killers started to smile, shaking their heads one after another, saying it was impossible. This is simply a joke. Our management is very strict. Everyone had their own unique code. How could she mix in? And she is also a woman. Just by looking at our figure you could tell that sturdy and tall man is not the same. That's right, Just now who said that she could be mixed in with our team? It's simply wildest thing imaginable. A lot of people in succession expressed their impossible. But the captain's vision had always been long-term. He didn't consider what his teammates said was wild imagination. Instead, he fell into deep thought. After a while, he narrowed his eyes halfway. You mean? It's very likely that she's wearing the same clothes as us, therefore we can't find her. As for the figure, this matter, a fat person can't become skinny. A tall person can't become short. However, a skinny person can become fat, and short person can become tall. Other teammates laughed at this teammate. His face becomes somewhat red. If it weren't for the captain asking again, he feel that his brain had gone dumb to actually coming up with such a question. Now, because of maintaining his pride, could only put a bold face on and continue with this topic till the end. The captain, after hearing what that teammate said, once again sunk into deep contemplation. Only at this moment, Su Luo suddenly feel her headache. She silently cursed in her heart how unlucky. Su Luo was itching to kill that teammate with one slap. What enmity does she have with him to actually harm her like this? Moreover, it was so coincidentally that Su Luo just so happened to be hiding in this team. Hopefully, the captain wouldn't do a search, otherwise, she would really be exposed. Su Luo's heart was somewhat restless. The captain clearly had listened to what the teammate said. He muttered resolutely to himself a little, then coldly commanded, "Everyone gather together, take off the black scarf, and report your number." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All the black-clothed kills stood up, lined up, and stood neatly in a straight line. Su Luo's heart was so angry as to be pumping very quickly. If she took off the black scarf, wouldn't she then be recognized? Chapter 9:10. Moment of Life or Death. 8. That Jia teammate. This lady will surely remember you. Su Luo gloomily glared at that teammate whose brain was clearly lacking, and tightly followed along the tree to retreat backwards. Su Luo was already at the end of the team. When they were resting, she deliberately picked a hidden place and gave herself an opportunity to retreat at any time. Now, after hearing the captain commanded everyone to take off their scarf for inspection, Su Luo was helpless and could only slowly retreat backwards. However, before she could retreat very far, and was discovered by a sharp-eyed person. Number 20. Where did you go? Number 19. In front of Su Luo, turned around and discovered the person had disappeared. When he lifted his eyes again, he discovered he had run very far. This sound, like a stone being dropped in a calm mirror-like lake surface, gave rise to ripples. This fool. Su Luo wished she could burst open number 19's head. At this moment, Su Luo couldn't just laugh it off and say, "I'll come here now, okay?" Su Luo turned around and quickly ran forward. The captain in an instant came back to his senses. Momentarily, he was extremely excited. "Chase. Quickly give chase." Team member Jia touched his chin. Not only had he guessed right, but she was actually in his team. What kind of luck was this? The teammate in the process of giving chase didn't forget to tug Jia teammate. "Why are you so stunned? Quickly chase. Master said there will be heavy rewards." Yes. The teammate Jia came back to his senses from excitement, quickly following his teammate to chase after Su Luo. This idea was actually mentioned by him, although it blind luck, but he actually encountered it. If he could catch that person, haha. This team member showed an expression of being very proud of himself. This team had 20 members, filled with the elite of all the troops. A ball with a push button suddenly appeared in the captain's hand. Suddenly team member E said, "Captain, please believe in us, we can do this." Teammate Jia also solemnly nodded. "We'll absolutely chase and capture her. Captain, please give us a chance." This team had 20 people, 10 of them was at the 5th rank, 9 people at the 6th rank, and the captain was at the 7th rank. Like this, how could they let the opponent escape? If they reported this to other teams, then credit certainly would get stolen away. The captain hesitated a bit and coldly said, "If you guys can't catch her, then present me with your heads." "Yes, Captain." All 18 members solemnly swore by nodding their heads. The captain looked down at the terrain, secretly deployed a plan. With a wave of his hand, all members immediately scattered into the vast jungle. At this moment, Su Luo ran very quickly. Her speed had increased to the max. In the forest, one could only see a light shadow flash by like lightning, leaving behind a blur that dazzled a person's eyes. Seeing that they didn't inform the other teams, rather with barely 19 people come to chase after her, the corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a cold smile. Greed for credit and early promotion. These were things that military fear the most. Up ahead was a corner. Su Luo's figure quickly entered the forest on the side, rather than running forward. At this moment, there were 10 people following behind Su Luo, including the captain. Teammate Jia was also in this group, but he was slowest. Su Luo bent her waist, afterwards hid behind the bush in the jungle. Nighttime was very dark, so black that one couldn't see the fingers in front of him. Just when a person was about to turn the corner and run ahead, Su Luo's sleeve flung up, and a green vine silently tightened around team member Jia's neck. Team member Jia gave a slight sound. However, because he running at the very last place in the team, the distance between him and the second-to-last member was several tens of meters away. So team member Jia was pulled back by the green vine. Su Luo flipped over her dagger. Her hands rose and the dagger fell. Chapter 9:11, Moment of Life or Death. 9. Team member Jia's career as a killer ended forever. Right now, there were still 18 people. Mission completion rate 1 versus 19. As a result, the captain led 8 people to ran forward in pursuit of Su Luo. And where was Su Luo? She lifted her dagger, reaping as she went. Her objective was very simple. Only when the distance between the last person and the people at the front was relatively far, then she would reap one by herself. But when there were 2 or 3 people near each other, she would bring out the little divine dragon and the acacia tree to reap together. Alone the entire way she reaped. This entire team, even with the captain within the 10 people, was almost completely cleaned out by Su Luo. The captain who was running at the front completely did not notice anything peculiar. Slowly, he sensed that the sound of footsteps was getting quieter and quieter, and that the people that ran ahead had long since disappeared. The captain's eyes creased slightly. He raised his hand and gave out an order in a cold voice. Stop! However, following the raising of his hand, there were only 2 sparse sounds that responded. The captain suddenly had a kind of bad premonition in his heart and turned around. At this time, there were only 2 figures behind him. The corner of the captain's mouth pulled apart slightly. Where's everyone? Number 2 and number 3 looked at each other in dismay. They turned their heads back and discovered that there was no one left behind them. What exactly was going on here? Under normal circumstances, shouldn't there have been 7 more people? Where had they gone to now? The captain suddenly had a kind of absurd feeling in his heart. Unprecedentedly, he felt nervous. Even when he faced his master, he had never been this frantic. He checked and touched the ball hanging at his waist. This was a signal ball. He just needed to pull and make it ring. Then hundreds and thousands of martial artists in the jungle would all flock over. However, did he really need to pull it and make it ring? Go back and take a look. Up ahead, they had already lost any trace of their objective. The captain hesitated for quite a while, and finally still decided to go back and take a look. He wanted to ascertain if that 7 people had truly gone missing, or they had merely fallen behind. Turning back, the captain still ran at the front, with number 2 and number 3 following behind. At this time, Su Luo, who was hiding in the dark, the corner of her mouth hooked into a sneer. Honorary captain, even if you dig for a meter into the ground, you won't find the corpses, Su Luo muttered to herself from the bottom of her heart. The captain and number 2 passed with one in front and one behind. Su Luo waited until number 3 passed by her side and laughed coldly. A long, cyan-colored vine familiarly wrapped around number 3's neck. Number 3 had long since been on guard, so he produced a tiny sound. The captain and number 2 heard the sounds of movement and suddenly turned their head back. However, just when they were turning their head around, Su Luo threw herself ferociously at number 2, and the little divine dragon shot towards the captain. Number 2's strength wasn't bad. He was 6th-ranked martial artist. However, Su Luo had a reputation of being an unequaled existence within the same level. When she was of the 5th rank, she was without a rival within the 5th rank. Now, she was of the 6th rank. Naturally, she was also without a rival within the 6th rank. Who told the heavens to care for her and allow for her to have nothingness of space? Su Luo laughed coldly as nothingness of space enveloped number 2 without the slightest crack. Number 2 had lifted up his knife and was just about to slice downward, but found his speed had unexpectedly become very slow. No sooner said than done. The Yin Hua dagger in her hand flashed with a deep cold light. It was just like the expression Su Luo had on her face at this moment. Slice. A light sound rang. The dagger that was originally slicing towards number two's neck deviated somewhat because number two twisted his figure away at a critical moment. The dagger streaked across the black-clothed person's face, immediately producing a whirlwind with a strong smell of blood. At this time, number two's attack had also arrived. Su Luo retreated a step and enveloped herself in nothingness of space. Chapter 9:12, Moment of Life or Death, 10. They were both at the 6th rank. To her, who was enveloped in nothingness of space, number two's attack was similar to scratching the outside of a boot. She was completely immune to it. Right when Su Luo retracted her nothingness of space, her great dimensional imprint had already settled steadily over the top of number two's head. However, number two completely didn't sense it. Waited until he sensed it. Thump. The great dimensional imprint smashed down heavily. Number two was smashed dizzy in an instant. While you are ill, I'll take your life. The corner of Su Luo's mouth hooked into a bloodthirsty sneer. Her sleeve turned over. In a flash, the dagger once again appeared in her right hand. PFFTTT, Su Luo's figure shifted to number two's back as fast as electricity. She then raised her dagger and cut across. Immediately, a deep wound opened on the black-clothed person's neck. His artery was immediately cut off on the spot, and blood rushed forth like spring water. Oh, the black-clothed person fell down heavily, with both eyes opened perfectly round, staring at Su Luo with an expression of dying with grievances remaining. Su Luo shrugged her shoulders for lack of a better option. If it was possible, she also didn't want to kill people. It was just unfortunate that everyone was on the opposite side with the thought, if you die, then I'll live. So Su Luo killed without a single trace of remorse. Su Luo succeeded in getting rid of number two. As for that captain, she naturally left him to the little divine dragon. The little divine dragon's strength wasn't concealed. At that time, wasn't the formidable Li Yaoxiang also got teased and humiliated by the little divine dragon? Therefore, the 7th-ranked captain was simply inadequate for him to even look at. Although the little divine dragon seemed foolish and usually had a bewildered expression, but his power of observation was extraordinarily sharp. The captain wanted to press that signal alert ball, but how could the little divine dragon permit him to do so? The little divine dragon's first objective was precisely that ball. The little divine dragon leapt onto the captain's body and took a bite at his waist. That signal alert ball, just with a mere 2 to 3 mouthful, was directly swallowed by the little divine dragon. The captain watched this freakish scene with his eyes opened very wide. By no means did the little divine dragon care if the captain was shocked. He treated the captain's body like a tree to be climbed. After a 2 or 3 moves, he had climbed up to the top of the captain's head. Only then did the captain return to his senses and begin to deal with the little divine dragon. However, he, who had already lost the key moment, no longer had the opportunity. He didn't have a dagger, but he had claws. The incomparably sharp claws streaked across a black-clothed person's neck. Spray 3 to 4 claw marks of varying depth appeared on the black-clothed person's neck. Simultaneously with blood soaring, he quickly collapsed to the ground. In such a short period of time, out of 9 people, 8 were already dead. The last remaining black-clothed person, seeing that the situation was bad, turned around and wanted to run. However, how could Su Luo let him run away to deliver this news? The acacia tree's green vines stretched out with swoosh sound and confined his right arm, suddenly dragging that person backwards. That person was also a ruthless person. He saw that he could not struggle free, and with a wave of his hand, he chopped off his own right arm. At the same time, his figure shot forward like lightning. "Want to run?" The little divine dragon snorted darkly. His figure was like an arrow leaving a bowstring. With whoosh 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 sounds, he shot forward. That black-clothed person's had lost an excessive amount of blood. Additionally, his speed couldn't be compared with the little divine dragon's speed. So, very quickly he was overtaken. The little divine dragon angrily whirled his fist and split his head open. So far, this entire elite team had all been eliminated in one stroke by Su Luo's team. Awoo. Quickly run, quickly run. The little divine dragon rushed over towards Su Luo with a panicked expression. Able to make the little divine dragon panic like this? Couldn't be that the old witch had caught up, right? Su Luo's expression changed suddenly. She picked up the little divine dragon, turned around and ran forward. This time, Su Luo had guessed correctly. The person who had arrived just so happened to be Fairy Yin Xia. Originally, Fairy Yin Xia was still over there, angered till she nearly had a stomping fit. However, when she heard the sounds of activity in the jungle, she rushed over without another word. Chapter 9:14. Chased for hundreds of kilometers to be killed. 2. The moon was obstructed by a thick layer of clouds, only giving off a dim luster. In the forest, Su Luo was running very fast. After images constantly flashed by in the forest. If they didn't know better, bystanders would think there were ghosts haunting the place. Although Su Luo's speed was fast, but her counterpart's speed wasn't slow either. Because her location had been exposed from before, there were hundreds of people all circling that place. Fairy Yin Xia arrived, treading on air. If it's said that at the start, she wanted to catch Su Luo just to vent her anger, then now, she must kill Su Luo. Fairy Yin Xia's body hovered in mid-air. Her line of sight reached very far, and she had a panoramic view of the entire forest. However, because it was night, what could be seen was very little, and with densely packed branches and leaves blocking the view as well. So, in a short time, she still couldn't find Su Luo. However, speaking of Su Luo, she was running as fast as flying. In a single breath, she had run over 3 mountain tops. Only after she had covered a distance of 5 kilometers did she then exhale a breath of air. However, before she had even finished exhaling this breath of air, she saw a troop suddenly appear from the side. This troop, unexpectedly, had as many as 50 people. Right when Su Luo had wanted to turn around and leave, another troop of 50 people actually appeared behind her as well. 2 troops, one in front and one behind, crowded around with Su Luo in the middle. However, the only fortunate thing was they still hadn't discovered Su Luo's existence. As she watched them walk closer and closer, Su Luo had no other choice but to whirl her body around and fly up to that ancient tree nearby. The ancient tree was thick enough for 3 people to wrap around. On the tree, the branches and leaves were luxuriant and in great number. It was so tall as to reach the sky. At one glance, the top couldn't be seen. Su Luo, with rapt attention, held her breath and pressed up against the tree trunk, hiding motionlessly. She adjusted her breathing to be very, very soft, almost invisible. Underneath, the 2 troops, one in front and the other in the rear, had run into each other. The captain of the troop in front clearly was at a rather good rank. He inquired coldly, "Have you seen any suspicious people?" "Haven't." The captain of the troop in the back answered. A helplessness flashed across both captains' eyes. However, this was also within their expectations. After all, the distance from where the blaze soared to the sky a moment ago was still very far from here. Just when the 2 troops became one and prepared to rush over to the location where the incident had just happened, drip, 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 a distinct water sound came from above. Drip, drip. Droplets fell onto one of the captain's heads. "It's raining?" This captain frowned and touched his head. He found a slight wet spot. If it was raining, their chasing operation would become much more difficult. "It's not raining." The other captain frowned. He didn't feel any water on top of his head. "Fuck, why does this water smell so bad?" The other team leader sniffed at it. "Shit, this doesn't seem to be water, it's urine." There was a strong foul urine smell. The crowd of people under the tree was suspiciously puzzled, while at this moment, Su Luo, who was up in the tree, had the urge to strangle the little divine dragon to death. How was that rainwater? Clearly this was the little divine dragon's urine. Okay? Seeing the little divine dragon standing very straightly, still leisurely as before, with a trickle sound, sprinkling down water. 3 black lines jumped out of Su Luo's forehead. She glared at the little divine dragon angrily. The little divine dragon blinked his large, bewildered, and very innocent eyes. "A woo, wanna pee? I can't hold it in anymore." Su Luo gloomily held up her forehead. "You can't just endure for a bit? Even if you want to pee, don't drip it onto their captain's head. Wasn't this looking to get beat up?" The little divine dragon looked at Su Luo perplexedly. "A woo. I don't understand." Su Luo spread out her hands. "What are we going to do now? You've provoked them. Can you beat them all?" There weren't just 5 or 10 people underneath now, but 70 to 80. Chapter 9:15. Chased for hundreds of kilometers to be killed. 3. How could she kill them all? Also, once the news spread out, countless people would swarm her. Then she and the little dragon would be caught in war with a sea of people. Just when Su Luo wanted to run away, the captain underneath had detected something unusual. "Look, what is that?" someone exclaimed loudly. Because the little dragon stood on top of a thin tree branch to pee, so he was discovered with one glance. "There is also a person up there," another person exclaimed loudly. At this moment, everyone looked up at the tree. When they had clearly seen the situation, all of them became very excited. Impassioned. "Found the target. Quick. Concentrate all our people here. Immediately prepare to fight." Everyone returned to their senses. The captain, whose face got urinated on, was angry and happy at the same time. Furious because the water on his head was actually urine. Happy because he found the target. His contribution was very large. "Capture the target. Hurry, everyone surround the tree. Absolutely cannot let her escape," the captain ordered loudly. Compared to that unlucky captain that was urinated on, he was very excited at this moment. Because his team had the greater number, so everyone at the scene would follow his orders. At this moment, countless number of black-clothed killers jump up into the tree. Their speeds were very fast. Their bodies were also nimble. How could this small tree stump them? In merely a blink of an eye, dozens of people stood on the tree. Su Luo's eyes flashed with a cold light. Looked like today would be somewhat dangerous. Not waiting for Su Luo to make a move, the little dragon had already flown down. The little dragon guarded while positioned in the middle of tree. Seeing the black-clothed people climbing up, he directly kicked towards them. His body was small, with very fast speed, and the force on his legs was full of strength. How could those black-clothed people be his opponents? Only one kick, and a hole appeared in that person's brain. Then he slowly fell to the ground. Very quickly, all of the black-clothed people got kicked down by the little divine dragon. They fell to the ground. All of them had a fist-sized hole in their head, overflowing with blood. Extremely tragic. The captain, seeing the momentum was not good, and hurriedly ordered, "Stop! I order everyone to stop." Even if he didn't say it, the people behind also were too afraid to climb up. Because the little divine dragon methods was simply too terrible. "We will push this tree down. See how it can still be arrogant." Not all of the black-clothed people stood there stupefied. Once in a while, one will also have a bright idea. Hearing this idea, the captain directly nodded. Possible. Therefore, with a wave of his hand, a group of black-clothed people rushed up and put their palms on this huge tree. Use strength to give a push. Crack, in less time it took to breath, the ancient tree was uprooted and fell backwards. Su Luo's expression changed slightly. The little divine dragon still wanted to rush down, but was pulled to a stop by Su Luo. Awurowo, the little divine dragon, entered Su Luo's space, but quickly ran out again. There was something in his raised paws, like throwing a ball in a shot put event. He suddenly threw it down. However, Su Luo was very puzzled. This time the little divine dragon didn't run. In the end, what did he toss away? Thinking up to here, Su Luo couldn't help but regret. If she just had a spirit pinball in her hand, now would be good. There were so many people underneath, a densely packed target. With just one spirit pinball smashed down, a large number of these people among them would collapse. Such a pity. The 2 spirit pinballs she got from that old witch. One was used to smash the old witch herself, the other was used to smash the barrier. Now she had none left in her hand. Chapter 9:16. Chased for hundreds of kilometers to be killed. 4. While Su Luo was regretting, the object little divine dragon tossed suddenly gave off a fierce spark. Flames sparked continuously. Intense screams of pain could be heard from below. Su Luo opened her eyes wide to check, and couldn't help but be surprised. Just now a small area of that densely packed group of black-dressed people had collapsed. Moreover, these people's body had all caught fire. The flame quickly spread on their body. Very soon, every one of them became huge balls of fire, constantly issuing blood-curdling screams. And at this time, the little divine dragon stood on a thin branch, with hands on his hips, constantly laughing with ha ha ha. What did you throw? Su Luo suspiciously asked. How come she did not know that there was a bomb with such destructive powers in her space? The little divine dragon spread out his small claws towards Su Luo. At this moment, in his claws were holding a small stone. Little Sky? Su Luo couldn't help but stare. Little Sky proudly humphed twice and said, beside this little grandpa, who else would it be? He didn't want to help out, because getting thrown around was humiliating, okay? Why would the little divine dragon care if he would feel humiliated? In his eyes, this was just a stone. Seeing how other black-clothed people tried to avoid the burning people had formed another group. The little divine dragon, ha ha ha, laughed. His body was like lightning, and quickly jumped into the crowd. Quickly, catch that little dragon. The captain, who was drenched in a head full of urine, saw the little divine dragon, immediately was angered half to death. Therefore, a group of people rushed towards the little divine dragon. The little divine dragon fast as lightning wandered in the crowd. Seeing a group of black-clothed people rush forward, the little dragon aggressively smacked the little stone forward in a circular arc. The little stone couldn't activate by itself. Only with contact would it burst out flames. However, the little divine dragon knew, but those black-clothed people didn't know. Seeing the little stone being tossed out, many black-clothed people reached out to catch it. The little stone passed around in a circle on among the crown, then again returned to the little divine dragon's hand. However, those black-clothed people that he had touched, from their hand a flame would ignite. In addition, the little stone's flame wasn't a normal flame, so these people simply couldn't extinguish it. This passing, a full dozen people, was attacked by little stone's flame and become a ball of fire. Some people that were ruthless, sensing something wasn't right, directly cut off their own ignited arms, barely able to save their own lives. However, after this battle, the black-clothed people became afraid of the little divine dragon. No one dared to get close to him again. War. Seeing this situation, the little divine dragon was very excited. Again he grabbed the little stone and was about to repeat this pattern. However, the little divine dragon had just rushed toward them, when the black-clothed people in the group immediately scattered and ran madly in all directions. After all, no one was a fool. No one wanted to become a ball of fire again. Having gained the upper hand, little divine dragon should be excited, but at this time, the little divine dragon's expression dramatically changed. War. Quickly run, quickly run. Old Witch Yin Xia had almost chased over here. He flew towards Su Luo like an artillery shell, with a very anxious expression. The little divine dragon's sensing ability was stronger than Su Luo's. Since he sensed that old witch's aura, then it meant the old witch had really chased over here. Su Luo's good mood also immediately vanished. She followed behind the little divine dragon and rapidly rushed forward. That old witch Yin Xia was really like a lingering ghost. Such a large forest, where could she hide? Su Luo had just ran away until no shadow was left behind, when a fierce wind appeared in the sky. Fairy Yin Xia's icy gaze appeared in front of the black-clothed people. Looking at the people on fire, Fairy Yin Xia's eyes burst out with a fiercely cold light. Chapter 9:17. chased for hundreds of kilometers to be killed. 5. Where is she? So many people, and they actually still let her escape? But that loathsome girl's speed was indeed fast. In a very short time, she had already run more than 5 kilometers away. Captain of the black-clothed group of people nervously replied, "Ran away? Up ahead. A bunch of wastes." Fairy Yin Xia flung her sleeves. Immediately an area of black-clothed people fell to the ground. Only one move. These black-clothed people all were serious injured, falling to the ground, spitting out blood. It could be seen how ruthless Fairy Yin Xia's methods were, and how formidable was her cultivation. Fairy Yin Xia's body was fast as lightning, rapidly rushing forward to catch up. While Su Luo, who was running ahead, couldn't help but feel nervous. She ran, and finally ran up a steep cliff. Su Luo cursed in her heart. Finished. In front of this steep cliff, there was nowhere to go to. Hurry and turn around, ah! Su Luo lifted up the little divine dragon and was just about to run back. However, it was already too late. Fairy Yin Xia's figure appeared in front of Su Luo. Still want to run? Fairy Yin Xia's ice-cold gaze watched Su Luo. There is a path in heaven that you refused to take. Hell has no doors, and you insisted on rushing in. Loathsome girl. This time see where you can run to now. Recalling those things Su Luo had done, Fairy Yin Xia was so furious as to give off smoke. She was itching to slice Su Luo into 8 pieces. Su Luo, seeing she couldn't escape contrary to expectations, her heart calmed down. I merely came out to walk around and take a breath of fresh air. Who wanted to run? Why are you so angry? Su Luo shrugged her shoulders and spread out her hands. This downplaying of matters appearance that Su Luo had on nearly enraged Fairy Yin Xia until it was unbearable. Loathsome girl. Your ability to be flexible and take advantage of a situation. Even your mother had no such ability. Fairy Yin Xia, seeing Su Luo's face, her fury immediately ignited into flames. At that time, in the beginning, she could still compete Yin Hua, but Yin Hua's strength was like lightning. Every day would increase. In less than a year, Yin Hua's strength had left her way behind. Later on, Yin Hua's strength became even more formidable, with more and more men standing on her side, and even Fairy Yin Xia thought of a god-like noble and graceful character. Her mind dimmed. Afterwards, when she saw Su Luo, and once again burst out with unprecedented anger. And at this moment, Su Luo smilingly said to Fairy Yin Xia, "Oh, why should predecessor get so angry? Aren't you trying to catch me? I was just about to follow you in return." Fairy Yin Xia obviously didn't think Su Luo would be this shameless. The mockery in the depths of her eyes had deep meaning. Still want to return? Wasn't that underwater palace destroyed by you, ah? Where did you want to return to? Seeing this face, Fairy Yin Xia was a bit distracted. Seeing this face, she would unconsciously recall those things from many years ago. At that time, her strength had also reached the peak. But because of that Yin Hua woman, every time she went to make trouble for Yin Hua, the men at Yin Hua's side would move against her and waste a part of her cultivation. Over a long period of time, her strength now versus Grandmaster Rong Yun and those people's strength differed by a great amount. Thinking of this, Fairy Yin Xia was even more furious. Thus, she must kill Yin Hua's daughter. When Fairy Yin Xia fell into memories of the past, Su Luo exposed an expression of embarrassment. Alas, who could have thought that everything would turn out like this? If she had known earlier. Isn't that? People can still fail, oh. Su Luo ha-ha laughed. Fairy Yin Xia walked step by step towards Su Luo. Su Luo, while smiling, she retreated. Predecessor, if you have something to say, please say it properly. This younger generation will obediently listen and speak frankly. Even beautiful teachers' secret matters, this younger generation will tell you, okay? Chapter 918. Chased for hundreds of kilometers to be killed. 6. Su Luo slowly retreated backward. Oh, why is predecessor being so aggressive? If there is any misunderstanding, just solve it, ah. Su Luo was still smiling as before. Fairy Yin Xia's eyes flashed with an insincere smile. She didn't speak. However, the killing intent around her body started to boil up and spreading. Su Luo retreated back step by step and soon reached the edge of the cliff. The cliff was very high up, and also near the riverbank. The mountain wind whistled past. Su Luo's back was somewhat cold. Fairy Yin Xia stretched out her long arm, suddenly grabbed towards Su Luo's face. That face of Su Luo's. The black clothed cover fell off, revealing such a beautiful face, but had a pair of panda eyes. Seeing this face, Fairy Yin Xia's eyes were opened very wide, fiercely staring at Su Luo. In an instant, her whole body stiffened to stand rigid. Her face full of hate was twisted and malevolent. Her hands were tightly clenched into fists, and her body shook continuously. Ha 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 ha! Suddenly, Fairy Yin Xia looked up to the sky and laughed. She laughed until tears directly flowed out. Yin Hua, you bitch. You see, this is the daughter you give birth to. Ha 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 ha! Su Luo, seeing Fairy Yin Xia's deranged appearance, silently swallowing her saliva. If she didn't go now, then should she wait until when? Su Luo slowly retreated backward half step. However, just at this moment, Fairy Yin Xia's icy cold and strict eyes shot towards Su Luo. Su Luo's heart shook. Her footsteps immediately stopped. You ugly freak! Fairy Yin Xia, especially short of breath, pointed at Su Luo. Her face had a hard-to-conceal mocking smile. Su Luo awkwardly coughed. Much uglier than me. Fairy Yin Xia very seriously and stubbornly stared at Su Luo. Su Luo didn't know why the old witch Yin Xia must compared whether beautiful or ugly with her. But she knew now was not the time to provoke her. Therefore, yes, this young generation is much uglier than you. If with this reason the old witch Yin Xia could let her go, then that wasn't bad at all. But Su Luo clearly thought too optimistically. So pitiful. Fairy Yin Xia curled her lips up. Su Luo's mouth drew back. What could she say? She couldn't say anything, and could only maintain her silence. Now if Su Luo retreated a step back, and that was the cliff. Hey, you really want to hound me to death? I already told you. Don't think my master won't know it was you that killed me. Su Luo swallowed her saliva. Running along this road, I have already buried a few tokens. At that time when master doesn't see me, he would find it and discover that letter, humph, humph. Hearing these words, Fairy Yin Xia's figure immediately paused. Loathsome girl, I didn't think that you had left behind this resource. Fairy Yin Xia's eyes contracted, but she immediately sneered. But you can rest assured, where you were along this road, this fairy completely knows by heart. Therefore, after you die, the road you ran along would become an overgrown wild area. In other words, Fairy Yin Xia would destroy everything along this road, turning this place back into overgrown wild area untouched by humans. Su Luo's eyes opened wide. If this was true, then Fairy Yin Xia really used a huge handle. For directions were very quiet. There were only the sound of freezing wind whistling. Su Luo didn't dare to disturb this old witch. If she was to offend her, the consequences would be too horrible to contemplate. Now, she only could use her brain, and not strength to fight the enemy. Su Luo's eyes whirled and circled around, thinking of thousands of ways in her head, constantly thinking of a way to escape. Seeing how Fairy Yin Xia stood there blankly, Su Luo's figure slightly shifted back a step. However, just this step awakened the spaced-out old witch Yin Xia. Chapter 919. Chased for hundreds of kilometers to be killed. 7. Yin Xia reached out. With one hand grabbed Su Luo by the neck. Loathsome girl. Things having reached this stage, you still want to run? Seeing Su Luo stood there staring blankly, Fairy Yin Xia coldly laughed. Rong Yun actually raised an apprentice like you who is afraid of death. Humph, you being like this, isn't it throwing away your master's good name? Since it's already like this, then this fairy dispose of you in his place, terminating this master and disciple relationship. Su Luo's heart was extremely depressed. Loathsome girl, this fairy will send you down to hell, and let your mother see the ugly daughter she gave birth to. Ha ha ha, Fairy Yin Xia frantically laughed. Her hand suddenly used more strength. How strong was her hand's strength? In an instant, cracking sound of bones breaking into pieces could be heard. Su Luo was pinched until her face was purplish red, nearly unable to breathe. Behind was the surging water of the river. If she could jump in, she still had a small chance. But now, a touch of despair slipped through Su Luo's eyes. Was she really going to die in this old witch's hand today? Su Luo's heart really couldn't be reconciled. She came to this world. These past 2 years she had ran around continuously, getting chased to be killed, fleeing, cultivating, constantly growing stronger. She had an amazing innate gifts blessed by heaven. She possessed 3 elemental systems. She was an advanced apothecary. She was a rarely seen space mage. She even cultivated out nothingness of space. But now, on the road to becoming a strong expert, she still hadn't finished walking it yet and fell down just like this? Really? Not very willing. Nangong Luyun, she didn't know where he was now. In the future, she will never be able to see him again. Afterward, what will he do being by himself? Su Luo clenched her fists. Momentarily, the rims of her eyes were somewhat moist. Fairy Yin Xia's hand tightened more and more, more and more. Su Luo's eyes turned over, almost about to faint in the next instant. At this critical moment, the little divine dragon rushed out flying from Su Luo's sleeves. He gripped that stone tightly and very fiercely smashed it towards the old witch Yin Xia's chest. Awoo. Go die, go die, go die. The little dragon, panting with rage, waved his fist and randomly smashed it about. Had no choice but to say, this movement from the little divine dragon really saved Su Luo's life. How could Fairy Yin Xia attach any importance to the little divine dragon? She casually waved her hand, and the little dragon was sent flying away. However, Fairy Yin Xia had underestimated that small stone. When the small stone touched Fairy Yin Xia's chest area suddenly, a flame soared up, filling the entire sky. Deep crimson flames violently rushed toward Fairy Yin Xia's most susceptible chest area. Fairy Yin Xia completely didn't expect a chunk of regular stone could explode out such a powerful force. This powerful force was not inferior to her own strength. This was simply unimaginable. At this moment, Fairy Yin Xia was seriously injured in the chest area. That deep red flame started to spread on Fairy Yin Xia's body. Its speed was very fast. Now how could Fairy Yin Xia still attend to Su Luo? She conveniently tossed Su Luo out, and outside of the steep cliff was a surging river. Quickly go. Inside the stone, Little Sky shouted loudly. You could hear. His voice sounded very anxious. After those 2 words, that transparent and fluorescent stone unexpectedly suddenly lost its vigor and restored to the appearance when Su Luo first saw it. At this moment, the little dragon also sensed the danger. He picked up the small stone and jumped into the river without saying anything else. On top of the cliff, Fairy Yin Xia's chest now had gotten burned very seriously. Although she had the flames under control now, but that badly mangled chest surrounded by flames and smoke. Fairy Yin Xia now was so furious that her complexion was ashen, her teeth making grinding noises. She itching to peel Su Luo's skin off, pull out her tendon, eat her flesh, and drink her blood. Chapter 920. Encountering Yun Qi 1. The veins on Fairy Yin Xia's forehead throbbed violently. She knew Su Luo had jumped into the river to escape. But now, her vitality was greatly injured, and was not suitable to chase after her to kill her. In fact, coming into contact with Su Luo, Fairy Yin Xia was also very unlucky. Before, when they were underneath the lake, she was wounded by Su Luo's spirit pinball. When deploying and collecting the underwater heavenly thunder wave, once again, a lot of her spirit strength was consumed. Now, she was once again injured by that rotten stone to this degree. Even when she was encircled and attacked by the 10 powerful families, she was never this seriously injured. Just when Fairy Yin Xia was hating until her teeth started to tightly grind together, her subordinate had already quickly rushed over. Master. The black-clothed person kneeled on the ground. Chase. I order you to give chase. Whoever chases Su Luo, that little slut, and kills her. This fairy will teach that person the supreme martial arts. Fairy Yin Xia was so stirred up that the muscles at the edge of her lips kept twitching nonstop. The leader of the black-clothed people was somewhat nonplussed. Supreme martial arts. It actually was the supreme martial arts. At this moment, Fairy Yin Xia was simply in a towering rage. Still here, quickly go. Only now did the leader of the black-clothed people return to his senses from his beautiful fantasy, so excited that it was hard to control himself. He took a deep breath and pressed down the excitement in his heart, but still couldn't cover up the happiness at the corner of his lips. Subordinate will go now to do this. Finished speaking, a group of black-clothed people, one after another, plunged into the river water. Speaking of Su Luo, since she jumped into the river water, afterwards, she met up with the little divine dragon. Now, time was very precious. They, without saying anything further, directly shot forward with flying speed. The waves of the river water were continuous and never-ending. When the black-clothed people would overtake Su Luo, she would take out her trump card and kill the opponents without leaving a single one alive. Fortunately, very few black-clothed people had the speed to catch up to her. As for that old witch Yin Xia, now, she was seriously wounded, so she wouldn't personally come to chase after her. Su Luo didn't know how long she swam in the river. She only knew to directly swim ahead, swim ahead. Swim ahead. The darkest period of the dawn had passed. The color of the sky gradually brightened, the white color of daybreak appearing in the east. She had endured the first half of the night's hair-raising hiding, and the draining fleeing in the later half of the night, on top of being injured by that old witch Yin Xia. Now, Su Luo had a dispirited expression. Her body was really exhausted. In the very end, she really couldn't persevere on. Her eyelids flipped over and she passed out. However, fortunately, her nothingness of space was still on, protecting her very well. On the river's surface, Su Luo was like a piece of floating driftwood, her figure submerged but floating, drifting with the waves. Suddenly, a small, gorgeous, luxurious yacht unhurriedly sailed through the cold river. It traveled eastwards at the lowest speed. In the middle of the wide yacht was a large room about 100 square meters. Inside, it was decorated magnificently, refined, and luxurious. At one glance, you could tell it was not something a common rich family could have. Inside, a very young lady was just standing in front of the window. One could only see her clothed in a decorated in butterflies, made of gold thread, immortal fairy dress. Her little face was moist and white like jade, with bright red lips, looking extremely cute. Such a young age, but with a pair of pitch-black as ink eyes, quick-witted and astute, with lights of wisdom that shone through their depths. The sunlight from outside the window shone upon her body, making her whole person seem lazy, giving off a languidness that was inconsistent with her age. Suddenly, the little girl's gaze flashed slightly. "Chuiyu, you look. What is that?" Western Jin's most pampered little princess, Ouyang Yulin, pointed to the figure floating and submerged on the river's surface. Her face revealed an extremely amazed expression. "Princess, that seems to be a dead person." Chuiyu looked for quite a while, saying in a practical tone, "I just knew you were dumb." Ouyang Yulin's brows and eyes curved, giving Chuiyu a disdainful glance. Chapter 921. Encountering Yun Qi, 2. Dead person? You're really stupid. Don't you see that that person's body is emitting a bit of spirit power? If it was a corpse, could it emit spirit power? How could I have a stupid palace made like you? Oh. Chuiyu received her instructions, hurriedly praising. Her Highness the Princess is still the more intelligent one. That's because you're too stupid. The little princess arrogantly cast her a glance. This servant is stupid. It's not as if Her Highness the Princess hasn't known for 1 or 2 days, Chuiyu muttered. The little princess had her hand behind her back and walked out, then suddenly halted her footsteps and turned around to look at Chuiyu. This princess knew you were stupid, Just didn't know you were stupid to this degree. Chui Yu. Her Highness the Princess's words were always this sharp, not giving a thread of consideration. However, it's no wonder. This little princess the royal family doted on, indeed had the qualifications to not give anyone face. At this moment, the little Princess Yulin, who looked like an old man with her hands intersected behind her back, unhurriedly strolled out. When she stood on the deck, a huge group of people followed behind her with a whoosh sound. Protecting the princess was a great responsibility. Nobody dared to slack off. At the moment, Su Luo's body, flowing with the waves, got even closer to the yacht. Go, fish up that person. The little princess, full of imposing manner, arrogantly and bossily ordered her subordinates. She actually wanted to see why that person who resembled a corpse could emit spirit power. It made her greatly curious. The princess ordered. Naturally, countless people rushed to win approval. Thus, the little princess carelessly picked a maid with good cultivation. You go. The maid accepted the order and went. However, before she had walked several steps, the corner of this little princess's mouth suddenly hooked in a strange smile. Wait, the palace maid bowed and stopped. This little princess' temperament was bizarre and volatile. No one could guess what she was thinking in her little head. The little princess snorted. If that person is beautiful, then you pick her up. If she is not beautiful, then throw her back to feed the fish, so as not to dirty this princess's eyes. Finished talking, she waved her hand, carelessly dispatching the maid to go. Okay, quickly go. Once the princess said these words, the surrounding people had no reaction, because they had all grown accustomed to it. They were used to this princess saying astonishing words with a habit of judging one by appearances. The maids and the palace eunuchs by the little princess's side would specifically choose beautiful things for her, to please her. Surveying the entire palace, the maids and eunuchs that looked pretty were all gathered away by her. This hobby of the young lady, if put in modern times, would be severely uncontrollable. Because she was the little princess most doted on by Western Jin's emperor, she was able to carry out this hobby of hers. The maid jumped down into the water, very quickly swimming to the location where Su Luo was. The princess's gaze was sharp. If she only used 90% of effort instead of 100%, then at that time, the princess would definitely be merciless and not give her face. The maid, thinking this in her heart, sped up even more. Very quickly, she neared Su Luo. The split second when she saw Su Luo, the maid's lips cried out in surprise. Oh heavens, such a beautiful young lady. One could only see this young lady quietly lying on the river's surface, her eyes tightly closed, her fingers tightly clenched. Could only see her facial features being so exquisite as to be perfection. She had no makeup applied on her face, yet her skin was delicate, so elegant as to be moving. Simply so beautiful that it made people stop breathing. That light color dress made her look like a fairy, sending off lights in all directions. Its radiance illuminated her and attracted people's eyes. This simply was even more beautiful than the little princess. Simply blinded her eyes. The palace maid knew, if she brought back this woman, Her Highness the Princess would certainly love it at that time. She would earn meritorious credit. Chapter 922. Encountering Yun Qi 3. Only, even though this young lady's eyes were closed, her whole body still emitted a clear cold light, appearing very indifferent and heartless, involuntarily making people want to retreat, as if even an extra look was blaspheme. Truly was, really like a fairy from the 9th layer of heaven that had fallen into the mortal world. Too beautiful. The maid stared blankly, her mind recalling the little princess orders. Not saying another word, she lifted Su Luo up and was just about to return. However, what was hard for her to imagine was, within a range of 1/3 of a meter from this young lady, her hands unexpectedly couldn't reach. Just like, this young lady's body had an invisible rectangle-shaped protective cover, enveloping her entire body. The maid's gaze suddenly flashed. Wasn't it so? Soaked for so long in the river water, this young lady's clothes weren't even wet, so clean. Not even a trace of a water spot was on her body. There absolutely was a protective cover shielding her. On the yacht, the princess saw the maid rigidly standing still in the river water and couldn't help but to frown slightly. However, before she could pass down an order, that maid had already put away all her doubts. She turned to swim to Su Luo's back, pushing her body towards the yacht. Sure enough, the people at the little princess's side, there wasn't a single stupid person. Very quickly, the maid holding Su Luo flew up and jumped onto the deck. The instant she saw Su Luo, the little princess's eyes immediately shone. Oh my, this one looks really good. Seeing that face of Su Luo's, the little princess's eyes stared until they was straight, clicking her tongue in astonishment. The little princess seized the opportunity to touch Su Luo's face, discovering that her face was powdery soft. It felt exceedingly good. This little princess admired everything that was beautiful, including people. It could be said that at her young age, it was already completely out of control. The people serving at her side, not a single one was stupid. Also, not a single one of them looked ordinary. Everyone would say that when the maid at Princess Yulin's side walked out, even the prized daughters of aristocratic families couldn't compare to them. This was a fact. But how could the clothes on her body be dry? The little princess had the same doubts as that maid. The surrounding people looked at each other in dismay. The highly intelligent little Princess Yulin couldn't understand. How could they, this group of insignificant servants, possibly understand? For a moment, it was deadly silent on the deck. The little princess held her chin and pondered, and circled around Su Luo, the sleeping beauty. She tilted her little head, thought for a long time and still couldn't understand. She finally just waved her hand. Not going to care. First carry her back. Pay attention. Must have the imperial physician carefully give her medical treatment. If she doesn't recover after treatment, you guys ask the imperial physician to come see me with his head. Ever since the little princess saw that face of Su Luo's, afterwards, when she once again lifted her head to see these young maids and palace eunuchs at her side, she immediately frowned. The people depended on being compared. Having Su Luo's exceptionally beautiful countenance as a comparison, the surrounding group of people were immediately eclipsed. They all became ugly people. Don't know how long had passed. Su Luo's pair of thin as a cicada's wings, thick eyelashes fluttered slightly. Afterwards, she opened her eyes. Where was this? Su Luo's heart was full of questions. Last night, she swam until she was completely spent. She had fought for a long time with the black-clothed people in the river. Only after she had killed a portion of them was she then able to escape their encirclement. Afterwards, she once again swam for a long time. After that, she wasn't aware of anything more. Just when Su Luo was in a moment of confusion, the door was pushed open with a creaking sound. Su Luo raised her eyes, then met with a delicate and gorgeous little face. This was a very beautiful young girl. Especially that pair of eyes, vivid and moving, as if they could speak. The young girl had both hands behind her back and leisurely walked to in front of Su Luo. Chapter 923. Encountering Yunqi. 4. Seeing her pretending to be mature, Su Luo subconsciously didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Thus, she smiled at the young girl. The young girl in front of Su Luo was not just someone. She was the little Princess Yulin that the Emperor of Western Jin doted on the most. Ever since the princess saved Su Luo, afterwards, her heart had too many doubts, so she had already come by several times. Several times before when she came, Su Luo was unconscious, and her whole body seemed to be surrounded by a mysterious protective layer. Other people simply were unable to get near her. It made the little princess so anxious that she could only watch helplessly. Only, this time, coincidentally, she just so happened to wake up when she came. The little princess wasn't won over by just a smile from Su Luo. She raised her hand in an imposing manner, and a maid eagerly moved a seat over. After the maid had rubbed it clean from top to bottom, only then did this beautiful little princess casually sit down. Su Luo unconsciously laughed. This young girl's airs didn't seem to be very small. The little princess cast a sidelong glance at Su Luo. If it was someone else, their first sentence certainly would be to inquire about Su Luo's origin, but not this little princess. She would always say something that shocked people. I saved you. The little princess's pitch-black as ink eyes shone brilliantly as she looked towards Su Luo, concisely saying it. Su Luo nodded her head. This was the truth. The little princess's eyes narrowed slightly, then she coldly asked again. How are you prepared to repay me? Her words were direct and efficient, without a bit of hidden meaning. Su Luo lightly smiled. What do you want? The little princess's remote and cold gaze was fixed on Su Luo's face. Your looks are actually pretty good. Since it is like this, then stay at this princess's side as a palace maid. Her tone was very condescendingly arrogant. However, Su Luo didn't get angry. This girl called herself a princess. Naturally, she couldn't be Easternling's princess. Could she be Western Jin's princess? Su Luo's eyes brightened. She had gone westward this whole journey, precisely with the hope to run into the imperial palace to steal the spirit dance steps. Now, the little princess wanted her to become a palace maid. Wasn't it like wanting to sleep and being given a pillow, just right? Su Luo's heart was joyous, but her face remained calm and collected. She even revealed a trace of anxiety. Seeing Su Luo was not too happy, the little princess was even more pleased with herself. She coldly snorted. I saved you. You need to repay me. Su Luo seemed somewhat unwilling. Repaying you doesn't necessarily mean becoming a palace maid. Who told you to be a palace maid forever? Even if you wanted, this princess doesn't want it. Humph, at most for 3 months, do you agree or not? The little princess, with emphasis, threatened Su Luo. If you don't agree, this princess will immediately order someone to throw you in the river to feed the fishes. Su Luo was secretly happy in her heart, but she appeared to hesitate for a long time. Finally, looking at her with reluctance, agree. I'll be a palace maid for 3 months only. Humph, even if you want to be one for 4 months, this princess also wouldn't be willing. The little princess arrogantly raised her chin. All right, you should properly recuperate. Later this princess will have someone deliver some beautiful clothes over. The little princess naturally wasn't a bit stingy towards her own people. After the little princess left, only then did Su Luo give voice to soft laughter. But, just now, didn't the little princess praise her for being beautiful? What was this all about? Could it be she hadn't seen her panda eyes? Su Luo reached out to feel that pair of panda eyes that made her depressed to the point of spitting out blood. However, the next instant her hand stiffened in midair. Her skin was smooth as jade to the touch, completely lacking that coarse feeling from before. Su Luo suddenly had a promotion in her heart. She ran to the front of a table and looked at herself in the mirror. At this moment, an absolutely stunning face reflected back from the mirror. Seeing that face in the mirror, Su Luo was practically dumbfounded. Was this really her? Chapter 924. Encountering Yun Qi. 5. Truth be told, this face and the one from before still had 6 points of resemblance. It's just that, after having Yin Xia that old witch's ointment applied on, it seemed to have made some adjustments to her previous facial features. Just as if she had surgery to fine-tune it a bit, touching up her original 7 points into a 10. At this time, Su Luo's facial features were simply the pinnacle of perfection. Looking at this face, Su Luo almost couldn't recognize herself. This princess knew how to make the best use of everything. After Su Luo agreed to her condition, on the second day, she sent someone to call Su Luo over. When Su Luo arrived, this little princess was just sitting at the side of the table, playing. One could only see her powdery little face that was like cuts of jade become taut. Her right hand held a dagger while her left hand was tightly clenched into a fist. She only kept the middle finger that were as fair as jade out. At this moment, she was deadly earnestness, scraping away at that middle finger extended from her left hand. She turned that finger and scraped off thin as American ginseng slices, area by area. Seeing Su Luo come over, she raised her head and revealed a pink and delicate little face. It's just that there was a blood stain hanging at the corner of her mouth, making her appear bloody and sinister. Sit. The little princess placed the finger she had scrapped and picked at with a dagger into her mouth, then commanded at Su Luo as she wished. At this time, this little princess looked like a sinister little demon. Do you want to eat? The little princess raised her bleeding finger and offered it to Su Luo. Su Luo's expression didn't change. The corner of her mouth had an indifferent, shallow smile. Princess should save it for yourself to enjoy. This servant has already eaten. Since she needed to act as a palace maid, Su Luo naturally did as the natives did, calling herself servant. Only that, hearing this word, servant, the little princess frowned slightly. In the future, don't call yourself servant. Hearing it makes me uncomfortable. These words matched Su Luo's the intention, so she nodded her head and promised. Are you not afraid? The little princess slanted a glance at Su Luo. She had even sliced away at her finger. Yet this person wasn't afraid. Earlier, she had eaten a very rare steak. The remnant bloodstain at the corner of her mouth hadn't even been wiped off. This person didn't even have a bit of reaction. Su Luo smiled indifferently. Does the princess want to hear the truth? Of course, if you dare to tell a lie, this princess will immediately command people to throw you into the river to feed the fishes. The little princess pushed her neck out and arrogantly threatened. Su Luo pursed her lips and smiled. Since this girl allowed her to tell the truth, then what good was it for her to conceal it? Does the princess think radish tastes good? Su Luo asked softly with an earnest expression on her face. The little princess was immediately angered. She threw down the dagger with a bang sound and glared at Su Luo fiercely. What kind of eyesight is that? Why did it grow so perceptive? Annoying. The corner of Su Luo's mouth parted slightly. This little girl was sometimes shockingly mature, yet at other times, unreasonably childish. Then, just take it as if I never said it? Do you take this princess as deaf? The little princess scowled as she glared, knitting her eyebrows while looking at Su Luo angrily. Just exactly how did you see, though it? She had been playing this little trick for quite a long time. Clearly, even the father, the emperor, had not seen through the trick. In the entire imperial palace, only third elder brother knew. How did the person before her see through it? Su Luo smiled. That's not that I saw through it. Rather, when I was young, I also played this trick before. When the little princess heard that, her eyes immediately lit up. You've played it before? I was just saying. How could you have seen through the trick with just one glance? Oh, that's right. What are you called? Ever since Su Luo mentioned having played this trick before when she was young, the little princess had a kind of intimate feeling towards Su Luo and felt that she had gotten a lot closer to her. Called what? Su Luo muttered a few words to herself. Yin Xia, that old witch, definitely wouldn't let her go. So Su Luo, this name, couldn't be used. Chapter 925. Encountering Yun Qi. 6. Nangong Lu Yun. I'll just borrow the word Yun from him. This thought flashed through her mind. She raised her eyes and smiled. My surname is Yun, and my first name is simply one word, Luo. Yun Luo, ah, the little princess murmured to herself, then suddenly lifted her eyes. You're actually called Yun Luo? Su Luo blinked her eyes suspiciously. Is there a problem with this name? Of course there's a problem. You ought to know. My third elder brother is called Yun Qi. Then, if you put them together, wouldn't it be Yun Qi, Yun Luo, one? The little princess looked Su Luo up and down. Pretending to think seriously about it, she touched her chin. Not to mention, you're this beautiful, actually matches rather well with my third elder brother. The little princess was immersed in her own train of thought and hadn't realized that the moment she said those words, Su Luo's complexion had changed slightly. Yun Qi, Yun Luo, Yun Qi. This name, Yun Qi, made Su Luo nearly regret until she stuffed it into a corner. Su Luo thought that in this lifetime, she would never have to hear this name again. She didn't expect that she would hear it again, and unexpectedly from the mouth of the almost 10-year-old girl before her. What are you thinking about? The little princess saw Su Luo's strange expression and was immediately displeased. This girl, Her mood had always been prominent on her face. Su Luo curbed her expression and lightly said, similar to the Third Highness's name, so somewhat offends. This Yunqi, the corner of Su Luo's mouth pulled slightly. This Yunqi and the Yunqi from her previous world. How could he be the same person? The him from the previous world was still living well, extremely comfortably. In fact, the little princess didn't know what Su Luo was thinking. She waved her hands and said sternly, "What is there to be offended about?" Third elder brother nowadays wouldn't pay particular attention to these convoluted, over-elaborate, and strict rules. Regarding this third prince called Yunqi, Su Luo suddenly had a kind of bad premonition. His Highness the Third Prince currently doesn't pay any particular attention to the convoluted and over-elaborate rules. Could it be that in the past, he paid close attention to them? Su Luo asked, pretending to be curious. How audacious of you, Yun Luo. Since when was Third Prince's matters open for you, a lowly palace maid, to ask about? A palace maid beside the little princess glared at Su Luo with displeasure. The little princess wanted her not to call herself servant. Does she really think she wasn't a servant? Truly ridiculous. Unexpectedly, the little princess swept an annoyed glance at that palace maid. In front of this princess, is it something that you, a lowly palace maid, can be harsh and unreasonable? Step down. Chapter 9:26. Encountering Yunqi. 7. Su Luo's fists clenched at her side. These words that Princess Yulin had said, heard by these people from ancient times, was unlikely to be heard wrong, not likely to think much of it. However, Su Luo, this person that had crossed over from the modern times, easily could think crooked. The contrast of Western Jin's third prince before and after was too different. She couldn't help but be suspicious. How did your expression change to become so unsightly? The little princess, without any restraint, pointed at Su Luo and said with a frown. Su Luo's brain flashed and thought of excuse. Might be because the body hasn't completely healed, and because of being blown by the river wind again, I have a little headache. In fact, right now, Su Luo is having a myriad of train of thoughts, nearly stuck together like a ball of paste. The little princess naturally couldn't understand Su Luo's thoughts right now. She nodded her head and carelessly waved a hand. Then fine, you first go back. Wait until your body is completely healed, then you can serve. Thank the princess for empathy. After Su Luo made her salute, she withdrew. Returning to her own room, Su Luo sat down on the bed with a blank expression. Just now, hearing what Princess Yulin said, the uneasy feeling in Su Luo's heart became more and more intense. Yunqi, did he also cross over? Or was this merely a coincidence? Su Luo felt that her brain was exceedingly sore, as if there were a countless number of ants crawling around, not allowing her to be at peace. The yacht sailed for 3 days and 3 nights on the wide river. On the morning of the 4th day, it docked on shore. After going ashore, suddenly, Princess Yulin's eyes lit up. Walk, quickly follow me over. The little princess led Su Luo quickly forward. Su Luo's identity now was the little princess's personal maid, therefore, she could not refuse. She could only allow the princess to lead her quickly to walk forward. Third elder brother, are you here to pick Linlin up? The little princess had a very sweet smile. Her eyes and brows were curved. She really looked like an 8-year-old girl, rather than the bizarre little demon. Now, standing in front of the little princess, was an extraordinarily handsome and bright male. He was precisely the third prince of Western Jin, Ouyang Yunqi. One could see him dressed in a white soft robe made with gold silk, standing there with a smile. That pair of azure-colored eyes reflected the light of sun. The brilliance gathered in his beautiful eyes, making his entire person seem gentle, handsome, and bright, having been bathed in the spring wind. Ouyang Yunqi smilingly looked at little Yulin. Little Yulin rushed over, throwing herself into his embrace. Ouyang Yunqi hugged the little princess, lifting her up, pinched her nose. You have great courage, and played until you got carried away, even to the point of not coming home? It's not like that. It's because that magical beast was too difficult to deal with. We have so many people, and together couldn't defeat it and was trapped. The little princess with her eyes open and told the lies. Seeing third elder brother's face full of disbelief and was afraid he would ask, the little girl hurriedly changed the topic. The little princess pointed to Su Luo and loudly said, "Third elder brother, you look. She is called Yun Luo. Isn't it similar to your name?" Finished, she even craftily blinked her eyes. Ouyang Yunqi rubbed the little girl's head. Such a young age, actually getting involved in a lot of other people's business. Finished speaking, Ouyang Yunqi's gaze carelessly swept towards Su Luo. This gaze was very absent-minded. However, the second he saw Su Luo, the place closest to Ouyang Yunqi's heart suddenly had a thread of worry and pain. Like an electric current streaking by, very fleeting. At the same time, Ouyang Yunqi's figure suddenly stiffened. He looked at the slender, elegant, and extremely beautiful woman before his eyes with a complex expression. She was indeed very beautiful, also she was somewhat similar to that person. Third elder brother's eyelids are really shallow, so easily to stare in awe, really boring. The little girl spread out both hands, taking a helpless stance. Chapter 927. Encountering Yunqi. 8. Only now did Ouyang Yunqi return to his senses, his calm restored. He slapped the little girl on the head in exasperation. "Small person but a great demon, fine. Go play on the side." The little girl struggled a bit, and Ouyang Yunqi didn't oppose. Right now, his attention was all on Su Luo's body. "You are called Yun Luo?" His eyes narrowed slightly, with a complex light in his pupils. Now, Su Luo's figure was rigid. Her back was cold, and the hand concealed in her sleeves were clenched tightly into fists. With great effort, she tried to control her mood, so that she didn't send a slap over. Yunqi, Ouyang Yunqi. Even if she was turned to dust, she would recognize this face. But now was not the time. Su Luo took a deep breath, buried her moodiness deep in her heart, her expression, in an instant, becoming tranquil. Perhaps it was merely a coincidence. Perhaps this Ouyang Yunqi merely looked the same as the Yunqi from her previous life. Su Luo continuously told lies to herself in her heart. At this moment, little Princess Yulin poked Su Luo in the arm. "You two are really interesting. It's only the first time meeting, and you both stare in awe at each other. How about just being together and letting it be?" Little Princess Yulin's words shocked people. The circle of surrounding people all inhaled a deep breath of cold air. The stately His Highness the Prince with an insignificant little palace maid. How could this be possible? The little princess really spoke without any restraint. Everyone all believed that third prince would chide the little Princess Yulin, but outside of everyone's expectations, this time, third prince didn't chide her. He not only didn't chide her, instead, he even smiled. His smile was like the clean spring wind, intoxicating to people. Ouyang Yunqi smilingly picked up the little princess's hand. "You also want to be a matchmaker, no?" "Don't want, but third elder brother's wife. You must let me, Yulin, find." The little girl justifiably stuck out her chest. "Why?" Ouyang Yunqi teased her and said, "Not going to tell you." The corner of little Yulin's mouth tilted up slightly. Through her careful observations for these past few days, not only did Yun Luo look good, her IQ also wasn't low. She was only a little less smarter than her, just appropriate to become her sister-in-law. As far as matching in terms of family, the difference in her status and what not, the little princess, with regards to these, considered it fleeting. Little Princess Yulin turned her face away, her other hand very naturally holding Su Luo's hand. Right now, Su Luo's mood was very complicated. Her hands and feet were ice-cold and stiff. She wanted to shake off Yulin's hand, but was afraid that Ouyang Yunqi would see a clue. Momentarily, her heart was very tangled. "Yun Luo, your hand is very cold. It's not because you are getting sick, right?" The little princess directly touched upon a sore spot and shouted it out loud right away. Su Luo was not in a good mood and nearly rolled her eyes. Under thousands of staring eyes, as an escaped fugitive, Su Luo repeatedly lowered her presence. But the little princess was completely the opposite. Time and time again, she would push her into the heat of the struggle. Su Luo could only sigh helplessly. Nothing wrong with me, little princess doesn't need to be worried. That won't do. You are this princess's people. How could this princess not worry about you? The little princess directly pushed Su Luo towards Ouyang Yunqi. Third elder brother, aren't you an apothecary? Quickly examine older sister Yun Luo. Don't know where the little girl got her strength. Su Luo, in a moment of unawareness, nearly was pushed until she stumbled. At the same time, Ouyang Yunqi subconsciously moved to support her by the shoulder and steadied her body. Being in contact with that pair of hands, immediately, Su Luo's heart became angry. Her tone was icy and indifferently spit out 2 words. Let go. Momentarily, all around was noiseless and quiet. Everyone present all sucked in a breath of cold air. A mere insignificant small palace maid, unexpectedly dared to berate His Highness the Third Prince. This was simply foolhardy. If you must know, the current His Highness the Third Prince was not the former useless bookworm. The him right now was a person second to none among Western Jin's younger generation. Chapter 928, Camping in the Forest, 1. How many aristocratic families' daughters want to be his concubine yet couldn't? Now, he was actually ignored by a palace maid? Suddenly, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Pairs of gossipy eyes shot towards Su Luo. Everyone was itching to make out a hint on her face. Indeed, this girl was truly beautiful like a fairy, unparalleled in the world. But wasn't this rather too arrogant? At this moment, those little Princess Yulin's pair of pitch-black like ink eyes were turning. This directly told her there was a story between third elder brother and Yun Luo. Thus, with the corner of her mouth containing a crafty smile, she looked left at Su Luo, then looked right at Ouyang Yunqi. At this moment, Su Luo also found her reaction was somewhat excessive. She retreated a step and made her salutation to Ouyang Yunqi. Just now, this servant's reaction was too excessive. Still wish your highness to please forgive me. This man may not be the Yunqi from her previous life. She shouldn't have reacted so intensely. Su Luo unceasingly persuaded herself in her heart. Ouyang Yunqi's eyes narrowed slightly. That pair of phoenix eyes contained complicated rays of light. The corner of his mouth perked up in a shallow smile. It was this highness that was rude. Miss Su, please. Su Luo's heart suddenly blanked. The hands concealed in her sleeves clenched even more tightly into fists. Miss Su. He actually called her Miss Su. Su Luo was certain she hadn't misheard. Su Luo took a deep breath, her expression increasingly becoming more calm. She raised her eyes. Her gaze was clear, cold, and serene. Your Highness remembered wrong. This servant's surname is Yun. Your Highness can just call this servant Yun Luo. She was called Su Luo in her previous life. If this man truly was Yunqi, then was he probing her just now? Only Su Luo really didn't want to acknowledge him. That kind of past she couldn't bear to look back on. She really didn't want to recall. Ouyang Yunqi's expression was natural. He lightly laughed and said, So your surname is Yuna. Yunqi, Yun Luo. It really is well matched with this highness's name. Your highness is joking. This Severant doesn't deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as your highness. Otherwise, this servant ought to change her name. Su Luo gloomily sighed in her heart. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have used this name Yun Luo. Who could have anticipated just this name would attract Ouyang Yunqi's interest? Ouyang Yunqi lightly looked at Su Luo, the corner of his mouth raised slightly. So easily to change one's name. Perhaps these 2 words Yun Luo also isn't your real name? Exactly because it wasn't her real name. Therefore, she wouldn't cherish it. Su Luo's long, shapely eyebrows slightly narrowed. Did this man have to insist on going against her, pushing her to the heart of the struggle? At present, she was already receiving too much attention. Normally, she wouldn't mind, but right now she was being hunted down by Yin Xia, that old witch. Su Luo, for lack of a better option, could only compromise. Whatever the Third Highness say, then it is like that. Finished speaking, she quietly retreated to the side, speaking no more. The little princess slanted a glance at Ouyang Yunqi. Third older brother, how could you bully my people? I'm not happy. Ouyang Yunqi, stroking her head and smiled. Our family's little Yulin got angry. What's to be done? I will penalize you. The little princess, with her head high and chest out, spoke in deadly earnest. Then how will little Yulin penalize third older brother? Although Ouyang Yunqi was talking to little Yulin, but his attention was directed on Su Luo's body. Just penalize you. Little Yulin tilted her head and thought for a while. Then, penalize you when you return. You will ride a horse to guard our surroundings. You aren't allowed to stray even a single step. The route from the harbor to the imperial capital still had 3 days of travel. Ouyang Yunqi readily agreed. Okay, there is no problem with this. However, listening to these words, Su Luo wished she could swat this girl's head. Why did she speak? Regardless of whether or not this person was her past life Yunqi. Chapter 929. Camping in the Forest, 2. She was itching to be far away from him. Now why was this little girl being so noisy? This girl knew perfectly well that she would stay with her in the same carriage. Su Luo slanted a glance at the little princess and saw a crafty look flash through the girl's eyes. So, this little demon was deliberate. The carriage moved and stopped along the journey, continuously journeying for 2 days. These 2 days, it was very calm on the road. Don't mention brigands. They didn't even come across people showing and fiercely fighting. Seeing this, the little princess was inevitably somewhat bored. Third older brother, I don't want to stay in an inn. Let's camp outside, okay? The little princess pushed aside the curtain and yelled at Ouyang Yunqi, who was riding a horse beside the carriage. Ouyang Yunqi's gaze passed over to little Yulin, swept a glance at Su Luo, and frankly nodded his head. Okay. His Highness the Third Prince passed down an order, and the carriage stopped at the side of a hillside with a wide meadow. This chosen place was excellent. Both hidden from the wind and dry, the ground was even with a wide horizon. Moreover, there was even a small stream quietly flowing not far away. The distance from here to the capital was already quite close. Tomorrow, as long as they crossed over this mountain, they would have arrived. Ouyang Yunqi's troops were trained well. The troops separated to carry out the order. The first squadron chopped firewood, the second squadron got water, the third squadron hunted beasts, the fourth squadron. These troops of 100 people worked in a neat and orderly manner. The scene was buzzing with activity, but was very orderly and neat. Third brother, I want to go hunting. The little princess, lifting her skirt, excitedly ran down the carriage. Ouyang Yunqi was very spoiling towards this girl. Pulling her, he smilingly said, Run slowly, be careful not to fall down. The little princess excitedly nodded her head. She had only run a few steps before she stopped once again. She turned around and beckoned Su Luo. Yun Luo, you quickly come over. The corner of Su Luo's mouth pursed slightly. She didn't want to have more contact with this third prince. Therefore, Su Luo waved her hand. Princess, you go. I will stay here to make soup for you to drink. However, matters that the little Princess Yulin was determined about, no one could refuse. One could only see her taking strides with her little legs, and with thump-thump, sounds run over in front of Su Luo. She lifted her very innocent and pure little face, smilingly looking at Su Luo. Yun Luo, you aren't afraid of my third brother, right? Su Luo's temples slightly bulged. This damn child. Really like to poke at a sore spot? To actually mention her third brother in front of her. Su Luo naturally denied it at all cost. Did your third brother grow 3 heads and 6 arms? How could I possibly be afraid of him? Only, seeing that person, her heart would feel uneasy. Certainly, this sentence, Su Luo couldn't say to the little girl. The little Princess Yulin, tilting her head, smiled with her face full of innocence and guiltlessness. But this innocent and guiltless little face, in Su Luo's heart, was alarming. What ghostly ideal was this little girl planning? Sure enough, the small girl, with one move, grabbed Su Luo's hand and towed her forward. Good, good. Then just us two will go. Third elder brother won't go. Quickly, let's go. Quickly go. If Su Luo just went with her like this, Wouldn't it be revealing that she had intended to hide? Wasn't it admitting that she was afraid of that Ouying Yunqi? Su Luo used 50% of her spirit power to stop her body. Her rock-firm and unyielding body. See how this little girl could still tow her. However, Su Luo unexpectedly still watched as her own body was dragged by her. She had already used 50% of her spirit power and was still pulled away by this little girl. Su Luo's eyes flashed slightly, an unfathomable expression slipping through their depths. This girl didn't seem to be even 10 years old, but this strength was at least at the 5th rank. Quickly, let's go. Quickly go. Let's go gather mushrooms. Yun Luo then will make mushroom soup for this princess. Chapter 930. Camping in the Forest 3. The little princess seemed to be extremely excited. Su Luo could only smile helplessly as she was dragged along by her. Right now it was just during springtime. The plants in the forest were luxuriant and there were trees with shade-giving foliage. Because before this, there was a bout of spring rain. Therefore many stalks of mushrooms sprouted out from underneath the many large trees. The little princess was carrying a small wicker basket on her back, bouncing and jumping as she gathered the mushrooms on the ground. Seeing her randomly guess and gathering them, Su Luo sighed helplessly. She helped her pick out the poisonous mushroom. Seriously, you especially pick the gorgeously colored ones. These kinds of pretty-looking mushrooms, about 80% of them are poisonous. The little princess pouted her little mouth. That I don't know, ah. Who would know how to pick mushrooms from the moment they're born? Aren't you the number one most intelligent person under the heavens? Even I thought you would have known from birth. Su Luo laughed as she made fun of the little princess. After being with this girl for a few days, she had continuously heard her say how she's the number one most intelligent person under the heavens. The little princess humphed twice and arrogantly turned her face away. What's so amazing about being born to know how to pick mushrooms? From the moment I was born, I had spirit powers. Clearly, Su Luo was very interested in this subject. You had spirit power from the moment you were born? Su Luo couldn't help but be gobsmacked. In this world, the majority of people awoke their spiritual power at 5 years old. As for her, it had only awakened when she was 15. That's right, Teacher de Gua says, people like me are called innate spirit in fetus, a rarely seen innately skilled person. The little princess raised her chin proudly. The thing about innate spirit in fetus, Su Luo had heard about it before. It was said that they would start cultivating from inside the womb, and that their innate skill was often very astonishing. Actually, it's not just me. Third older brother is also an innate spirit in fetus. It's just that he only awakened it later. The little girl said proudly. Su Luo frowned. Is he very incredible? The little princess said extremely proudly. Of course, my third older brother is the most incredible. In the Western Jin's entire younger generation, there isn't anyone who can beat him. Is that so? Su Luo said somewhat disbelievingly. Seeing Su Luo didn't believe it, the little princess was somewhat anxious. Of course, third older brother is the most incredible. There are many women who want to marry him, but third older brother doesn't like any of them. The corner of Su Luo's mouth parted slightly. Why was this girl telling Su Luo this? Chapter 931. Camping in the Forest 4. Su Luo was immediately struck speechless. This girl, unexpectedly, still had a side like an overbearing bandit. She pinched the little princess, Yulin's, powdery little cheek that was like cuts of jade, sighing helplessly. Say, what good points does big sister, me, have that you've seen that makes you simply must snatch me home to be your sister-in-law? You say, is it only this sister and others won't do? The little princess Yulin rolled her eyes repeatedly. Third elder brother has already said that before. Su Luo's heart whipped about furiously. The little princess Yulin whined again. I don't care. In any case, I want you to be my third older brother's wife. I just want you to. Su Luo was speechless, somewhat suspicious of whether this decision to go back to the palace with this girl was right or wrong. Very quickly, Su Luo had picked a wicker basket full of mushrooms with the little girl. In the forest, they saw scallions, ginger, garlic, and other types of seasonings. Suluo also picked them up. This is wasabi. The little Princess Yulin's eyes immediately lit up. She ran over, then plucking up a handful of it. Wasabi was a fragrant, spicy crop. In modern times, when eating sashimi, it would be dipped in wasabi that had been ground into a paste. Only, Su Luo sent an accidental glance at the little Princess Yulin. The little Princess Yulin thought that Su Luo didn't understand, so she made a show of earnestly explaining to her, when eating sashimi, dip a little bit of sliced raw fish and it'll be extremely delicious. The sashimi third older brother makes is the most delicious. When the time comes, you should have a good taste. Su Luo's heart shivered slightly. In her previous life, Yunqi's expertise was, precisely, in making sashimi. After she ate it once, she never went to a restaurant again and just ate what he made. Could it be that he truly was? Restraining the agony in her heart, Su Luo forced out a smile. Two people returned very quickly from their rewarding journey. At this time, the team of guards which had stayed behind at the campsite had long since boiled the water. At this time, the team of guards who had gone fishing also returned. Seeing the lively golden oriental whitebait fish, the little Princess Yulin was so happy she clapped her hands. Third older brother, Lin Lin wants to eat sashimi. Yunqi stroked her head. You really want to eat it? Although his question was directed at the little Princess Yulin, but he was looking at Su Luo with a smile on his face. Su Luo could not help but frown as she glared at him. Of course. Yun Luo also said that she really wants to eat it. Third elder brother, you see, she even picked wasabi specially for it. The little girl opened her eyes wide and told lies, lying as though it was as simple as drinking boiled water. Su Luo menacingly threatened the little Princess Yulin. The noses of children who tell lies will grow really long. The little princess arrogantly raised her chin up. Even if my nose grows longer, I'll still be the best-looking princess. Yunqi laughed, rolled up his sleeves, and seemingly out of habit raised his eyebrows at Su Luo. Be my assistant? Su Luo's minds seemed to have blurred for a split second. At this moment, she actually had a kind of nostalgic feeling of returning to the past. At that time, every time he would personally cook, he would always habitually call her to be his assistant. Wash the vegetables, cut the vegetables, wash the dishes. From beginning to end, all the preparation and cleaning were done by her, and he was only engrossed in cooking. Admittedly, his cooking skills were really pretty good, entirely able to match a chief in a five-star restaurant. Su Luo had protested strongly about not wanting to wash the dishes, but at that time Yunqi would always pat her head calmly and leisurely. This kind of skill-less work is most suitable for you to do, implying that he was taking her for a fool. Yun Luo, what are you thinking about? Third older brother is calling you. The little Princess Yulin, in a puppy-like manner, shook Su Luo's sleeve.
Cough, cough.
From her distracted thoughts, Su Luo returned to her senses. Seeing the face in front of her, she felt a little unnatural. Quickly come and give third older brother a hand. Otherwise, third older brother won't personally cook the vegetables, and we won't be able to eat such delicious dishes. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.